Long Island Sound has historically been rich in marine life and has long served as an important part of Connecticut's coastal economy. Recreational and commercial fishermen alike have relied on the Sound for plentiful catches of oysters, lobsters, scallops, blue crabs, flounder, striped bass, and bluefish. Yet human-induced changes to the Sound threaten the biodiversity of its waters and ultimately the fisheries on which local fishermen rely. Climate change has, in recent years, caused a slow but consistent rise in the surface temperature of the Long Island Sound. This has led to a shifting ecological paradigm in which fish adapted to warm water are more likely to thrive. There are many environmental factors that play a profound role in determining the ecology of any particular marine ecosystem. Among these factors, none of which prove mutually exclusive, are temperature, pH, light, dissolved gases, nutrient flux, salinity, and many more. While climate change can affect each of these factors, we looked at the impact of climate change on the mean surface temperature of the Long Island Sound. The Millstone Environmental Lab in Waterford, Connecticut has kept a record of the Sound's mean surface temperature every day for nearly 3 decades. Not surprisingly, the record shows the water temperatures are rising. The Long Island Sound Study, in conjunction with the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, has determined that fish populations in the Sound are changing alongside the water temperatures. An index of warm water adapted as well as cold water adapted fish has been kept by the state. Fish trawls conducted by the state show that while the Sound has historically been home to primarily cold water adapted fish, there has been a drastic shift in the abundances of the two types. Warm water fish now outnumber cold water fish in their mean abundance by a margin of 2 species per sample. The change in the fish population of recent years is expected to have cascading effects throughout the Long Island Sound ecosystem, ultimately affecting the way that humans use the Sound as a fishery.
An even greater threat is posed by the problem of pollution that has plagued the Sound for many decades. There are many large areas of water that are either severely deficient or entirely devoid of a dissolved oxygen. These areas are termed dead zones due to the fact that very little marine life is able to survive in them. Billions of gallons of wastewater from treatment plants enter the Sound every year. Along with this water comes a high amount of waste chemicals and fertilizers. Among the common chemicals being dumped into the Sound is nitrogen. When nitrogen levels are spiked in the water, there is an explosive growth of algae known as an algal bloom. This algae, like most living things, must die at some point. And when it does, the algae, along with all of the organisms that fed upon it, settle at the bottom of the estuary. During their decay process, these organisms consume a lot of the local dissolved oxygen. These areas are left either oxygen deficient or devoid. This leads to the area becoming a hypoxic dead zone where little can survive. This map shows the frequency of hypoxia in the bottom waters of the Long Island Sound. Note how much more common hypoxia is in the western Long Island Sound than in the eastern. This is due to a number of factors. First, there are far more contributors of nitrogen into the Sound along the more heavily populated areas of southwestern Connecticut and New York City. This difference in nitrogen load is compounded by the fact that the waters of the eastern Long Island Sound are freer to exchange with the open waters of the Atlantic, and thus cycling out the excess nitrogen. In any case, these hypoxic or anoxic dead zones are bad for business. Because the stratified waters of the summer months allow for little water mixing, there is particularly little oxygen at the bottom of the Sound where the benthic marine life is found. This benthic marine life is often what fisheries are looking to harvest: lobsters, crabs, and bivalves such as oysters and scallops.
Billions of gallons of untreated sewage flowing into the Sound every year, hypoxic conditions and dead zones occur frequently and over large areas. Major polluters like ExxonMobil are fighting to deregulate dumping. If they gain enough support in Congress, contaminant levels will surely increase, causing there to be more dead zones. Luckily, there are a number of dedicated environmental groups pushing Congress to tighten clean water standards. This would lessen the pollutants entering the Sound, causing fewer dead zones. Temperatures in the Sound have continued increasing over time with no indication of lowering. Although fish species are fairly resilient, there has been a noticeable shift from cold water fish to warm water fish. This trend is expected to continue as ocean temperatures rise. Fisheries are going to be forced to change their strategies. They will have to adapt their fishing techniques to harvest more warm water fish. Since dead zones cannot support fish life, these areas are now unproductive for fishing. The more pollution in dead zones, the less area fishermen have to fish, reducing their bottom lines. Environmental groups such as Environment Connecticut and Environment New York are attempting to gain overwhelming public support for protecting the Sound. The best chance fisheries have is to support these and other groups. As Connecticut residents, you can help by contacting your senator and urging them to stand up to polluters, to restore Clean Water Act, and increase the protection.
Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, swimming, swimming.